What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. Conversation we're about to have is going to be freaking awesome. I was on his podcast, and this dude is just so humble and yet has accomplished so much, brings so much value to the table. Damon Lembi is a two-time best-selling author, the host of the Learnit All podcast, and CEO of Learnit, a live learning platform that has upskilled over 2 million people. Drawing from his prior baseball career, Damon brings an athlete's perspective to leadership. Through his journey, he has gained invaluable insights into what helps organizations grow, how great leaders learn, and why Learnit All companies outpace their competitors every time. Well, Damon, what is up, brother? I had such a great time on your show. I'm so blessed to have you, and welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Jam, thanks for having me, Betty. I mean, I had a great time interviewing you. Really hit it off, so it's an honor to be here today.
Well, it's an honor to have you. And I got to start with, I love the name of Learnit. I love the Learnit All. You got to give me, like, where did this come from? Where were you like, learn it? And because it says a lot. The name says a lot, but I want you, in your words, how did you come up with this? Because I think it's brilliant.
Well, I've been at Learnit, which is a live learning platform, for 30 years, right? From the very beginning. I started off as a receptionist, but I'm not going to take credit for it. It was my dad. We were a large real estate company, hotel company in the Bay Area. And like a lot of great entrepreneurs, he wanted to solve his own problem. He wanted to digitize our portfolio, real estate portfolio. Long story short, he took a class somewhere. He thought it was long, boring, and in a stale environment. It was an Excel class. So he called the old CFO from our savings and loan. He's like, there's got to be a better way to do computer training. And I want it to be short, fast, and I want to call it Learn It. Whether it's Learn IT or just, we could learn it into anything. I want to learn it. I want to learn Spanish. I want to learn soft skills. And so really that is where Learn It started, June of 95.
Got it. Well, your dad nailed it. He absolutely loved that. I like this idea of learn it in terms of you can't, well, there's a great question. Instead of me trying to come up with my own, the difference between learn it all and know it all. And I really like this question or the topic because, when you say know it all, you think of these people immediately where you're like closed-minded, not having a growth mindset. Learn it all. It's like, you'll never learn it all. It's literally impossible. Tell me the difference, brother. I'm just curious what this topic, where we're going to go with this.
Well, it's funny because you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I talk about this all the time, right? What's a know-it-all? We all know those people. They have it all figured out. They have all the answers. They kind of roll their eyes, or they're not even listening to you when you're speaking to them. And as well as I do, and we talked about this before, it's like, if you feel like you have all the answers or you've reached your peak, well, you're crazy. You're going to get left behind because there's always more to learn and grow. On the flip side, we have Learn It All. And when I say learn it all, I don't mean all you do is learn all the time, because you got to be able to execute. I had a guy tell me one time, learning without doing is treason, right? But when it comes to learn it all, I really think that there's 5 key traits to being a great leader, a learn it all leader. And those traits are, you got to be humble, curious. You have to have courage to make tough decisions and try things, get out of your comfort zone. You got to be accountable, and you have to have integrity. Now, you think, well, do we even need to mention integrity? It's surprising, you do. And so that's really what I mean by being a learn it all, is that somebody who's open, who's not afraid to say, hey, look, I don't have all the answers. So I'm going to surround myself, especially as a leader, with people who are diverse with different strengths, and I'm going to tap into those people, and we're going to figure this out together.
Yeah. We talked a lot off air, and I know you obviously played baseball at a very high level. There's a lot to learn in the game of baseball. I mean, I don't know if you play every single day for the rest of your life, you still learn something. It's like there always seems to be something different to learn. What have you really learned from that sporting career that you apply in your professional life?
So I didn't realize that at the time. I basically went all in to be a baseball player. That's what, since I was I don't know, 10 years old. And I got pretty far. I was drafted twice. And after my career at Arizona State, I thought I was going to start my minor league career. Things didn't turn out. And right then I kind of lost my identity. Like, I'm a baseball player. What do I do now? Jam, to answer your question, I didn't realize the skills that I learned. I call it an athletic education of how transferable they were into the real world, into the business world. And those skills were around collaboration, resilience, perseverance, teamwork, discipline. These were all these important skills that you learned. Plus, what I learned, I played for 3 Hall of Fame baseball coaches. I was very fortunate, and so that helped model my behavior when it comes to, or my leadership style. But one thing that when people ask me today, because I'm in the learning and development world, what's one of the most important skills out there? I like to say learning agility, your ability to learn. And because think about it, when you're a basketball player, or when I was a baseball player, I'd come up to the plate, maybe I'd strike out. Hopefully my coach or somebody would give me a little feedback. I had to take that feedback and immediately turn around and apply it. And with the rapid pace of how the world's moving these days with AI and everything else, I think learning agility, learning something, unlearning, applying it is critical.
And to go back to this, learn and not apply is treason. I mean, it's a big statement for sure, but it makes sense to me. Like, I can picture people that are constantly going to conferences or the next self-development course, but not actually applying it to their life. And not that they don't want to, but it's just like they just want to be inspired or motivated, but they don't actually go put it into practice. What would you say? Like, how do you find that balance to say, all right, I learned something, now I need to apply it? What does that look like? So, because I don't know about you, but it's constant. I'm reading a book, I'm listening to a podcast, and you get so many ideas going, but you actually have to stop and apply it to have it do any difference in your life. Do you have a formula that you kind of subscribe to?
When you were on my show, I really appreciated how you talked about, you really jumped in, all in on growth and learning. And I was kind of the same way, because I'm like, I never really studied in college, so if I'm going to be a leader of this organization, I have to read as many books as possible and, take as many classes as possible. And so over time, and I kind of overdid it, I'd read hundreds of books and I wouldn't really retain anything. What I've started to do over the last couple of years is reread the books that I think were the most impactful for me. But also, Jam, when I'm reading these books, I'm thinking about, how does this apply to my professional life, as a leader, or, maybe even as a dad. And I also think, I've got 70 employees or so at Learnit. A lot of times I'll take a book that I really like and I'll turn it into a book club. And for our organization, and it's a great way to get people involved and engaged. But a lot of the questions I'll ask is, I'll say, hey, look, now as part of our book club, I want you to read these 3 chapters and I want you to come with ideas on how it applies to you, either personally or professionally. So I think a lot of that helps with the retention, because if you don't, then you read a bunch of stuff and you can't remember 95% of it.
Yeah, that Q&A, that back and forth, different perspectives, it's huge. So what are some of the books? Because it's interesting that you said that, because I found myself about 7 or 8 years ago, I have 3 books that I reread every single year.
What are they?
For whatever reason, they hit me. What are yours that you're rereading? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think one that I always reread, and I'm sure you've probably read it, is Obstacle is the Way, with Ryan Holiday. I'm also a big fan of Bill Walsh's book, The Score Will Take Care of Itself. I think that's a great one around teamwork and collaboration. Another one is, I'm a big Richard Branson fan on a lot of his work. The book escapes me. I think it's Finding My Virginity or something like that, but that's one I reread. And then a sales book that I'm in love with is called Jolt Effect by Matt Dixon. And that's a fantastic book. And it's mostly about indecision. and how customers or prospects won't go with you because of the status quo or just being indecisive. So those are off the top of my head books that I reread. I've read Obstacles Away probably 4 times.
Yeah, Ryan's a great author. Actually, a Northern California kid originally himself. So he's done some incredible work. You mentioned 3 Hall of Fame coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think of great leaders and I think of a Hall of Fame coach, that tells me they're probably a pretty damn good leader. If you were to picture in your mind these different coaches, what did you learn from each one of them that you said, oh my gosh, if I can just apply what they did, this is going to make my organization that much better? Because I certainly remember the good and great coaches. I also really remember the crappy coaches, but to have 3 Hall of Fame coaches, man, that's some incredible learning that you're able to do.
Well, I'll give you an example from each, and I'm going to throw in a crappy example as well.
Awesome.
From somebody who's not a Hall of Fame coach, it doesn't matter who it is, but it is a big league manager now, which is interesting. So my first one was Andy Lopez at Pepperdine, and it was really my first introduction really to leadership. So I go to Pepperdine, and it's this small 2,500 person school. And I went there, I got recruited. I was also drafted by the Braves, turned that down because of his vision and moonshot goal. His goal was, we're going to win the College World Series. And JM, a lot of people thought he was crazy, right? And he's like, because I even keep in touch with him still. And he said, people would say, hey, Lopez, man, maybe you shouldn't say that. That's kind of far out there, competing against LSU or these other big schools. But he set this moonshot goal. He recruited a great team who all had the same values, and we all worked together to hit that goal. Now, I got hurt and left. And the year after I left, they won the College World Series, and so, which is amazing. And I was happy for them, and it was like, that just shows you right there that you can set moonshot goals. And he didn't settle for, hey, we're going to win the division. No, we're going to win the College World Series. And he did it. And then it's not like today in sports, you can't just go into a portal and go to a different college, D1 college. So I had to go to JC for a year. And I played for a gentleman by the name of John Nochi at College of San Mateo. And what I learned from him was really tenacity. He just got after it. And he just expected you to show up every day and get after it. And they used to call him the old goat. And he's still alive. He's like 92. And then when I got to Arizona State, I played for a coach by the name of Jim Brock, super famous coach, Barry Bonds and everybody. And I played for him the year that he was going through cancer treatment. And he ultimately died at the end of the season during the College World Series, Game 3 of the College World Series. And, Brock had the reputation of being a very, very tough coach over the years. But what I learned from him was courage. I mean, he would show up, yellow, pale from cancer treatments, whatever, probably knew he wasn't going to be around too long. But when he was capable of showing up, he showed up during this time, because he was passionate about baseball. He loved his team. And I mean, just an incredible experience for me playing for him. Then this other one that I played for, after, Brock passed away, negative experience was somebody who put themselves first, took all the credit. When things went well, it was pitching changes, it was the lineup. But if things weren't going well, JM, it was because a fourth up hitter struck out with the bases loaded. And I was the fourth up hitter, struck out the bases loaded. And I always told myself, if I ever run a team or coach or lead an organization, I want to give my people all the credit when things go well. And if things don't go well, I want to have their back and be like, hey, that's on me as a leader.
Yeah, it's probably the worst thing a leader can do is taking credit away from the team. There's nothing positive that's going to come from it. And it just tells you, and again, I don't know who that is, but the insecurity must be so rampant for these people that they have to take that credit. What I love is vision, tenacity, and courage were the 3 lessons from those 3 Hall of Fame coaches. None of those are God-given talents. These are things that you can absolutely learn. So anybody listening, you can build your vision and communicate it. you can be more tenacious and literally just put in the work and courage. That's a muscle that gets stronger the more you use it. Um, Absolutely fascinating. What are you guys working on at Learnit right now with all these leadership skills and all the things that you've learned? What are you guys working on that you're really proud of right now?
What I would say that we're proud of right now is, well, one, we're trying to hone in on more of what, instead of offering a ton of stuff, we're trying to hone in on what we're best at, which is tough, so that's one thing, right? It's really getting focused on what our value prop is and where we're strong, and not working with customers who maybe don't fit in, right? So we can deliver more on who do. And then, just like everything else, we're starting to learn how, both internally and with our customers, adopt AI. I'm a huge fan of artificial intelligence, ChatGPT and everything else. And I'm always pushing my team. They probably think I drive them nuts on how we could use it as a thought partner, how we could use it to improve our operations. And also, we're starting to implement some stuff with our customers where when they sign into the learning portal, we have class finders, that's built on AI. We deliver classes on AI, and we're trying to build a habit coach and other tools that will help with retention. So that's kind of what I'm excited about these days.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible that I mean, I see people have this fear of what AI is. Look, it's here to stay. AI doesn't need to sleep. It doesn't need a bathroom break. It can do so many of the redundant tasks and let your people use their intellectual capacity to direct the AI. Is that kind of how you all are using it?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I'd be curious to how you're using it as well, if you have any specific examples. But at the end of the day, you're not going to lose your job necessarily to AI. You're going to lose your job to people who are power users of AI. And so, what I try to get my team to do is, I talk about the importance of being curious as a leader. When it comes to trying to learn how to do things differently, now it's not like, okay, how can we do this better? I want people to ask themselves, how can we do this better by leveraging AI? Is there a way that AI could help us with that? And so, and it gives, we have a lot of competition in the space we're in, and a lot of much larger organizations, and it kind of levels the playing field, right? Because I don't need to have a 15-person marketing team or 15 curriculum directors, curriculum developers. Now you can get things done quicker and faster, and things that used to take 3 or 4 weeks now could take like a day.
Yeah, no, we certainly use it all the time, and what I find amazing, what I'm really attracted to is people that have the ability to prompt AI
Mm-hmm.
in a way that keeps it moving. I'm pretty remedial, I will say, with my AI. Like, I kind of put in my thing and it crafts a message, and I'll kind of tweak it. Where I see people put it in, then prompt it again, then prompt it again, and then prompt it again, and it's like it spits out something perfect, but it took 4 or 5 prompts. That probably would have taken several weeks to flush out, but it happens so fast because it has that. I like this idea of curiosity. So that sounds like in your organization, this is something that you certainly advocate for. That curiosity is a good thing. Is that something that you talk about with your company? Something that you ask of everyone inside Learn It?
I don't think I don't tell everybody, hey, be more curious. I think what we try to do at Learnit is be a learning organization. And what I mean by a learning organization is, and I'm not talking about just formal training, taking classes from Learnit, but set up a psychologically safe space where people can try things and they can fail and they can learn, and you can give people feedback. And I think feedback is literally gold when it comes to learning. And when you do all that, you're going to find people are going to become more curious. And I think you get a lot of your best ideas and innovation from your frontline team. And so if they're trying things and they come to me and they say, hey, why don't we try this differently and see what happens? I think that when you do that, you kind of breed curiosity throughout the organization. So I like to look at us as a learning organization where people feel like that they can stick their neck out there and try things and know that if it doesn't work out, they're not going to break anything too bad. And I'm going to have their back, and we're going to figure it out together.
Yeah, you very intentionally said this word, or certainly I picked up psychologically safe space. Now, Google did a bunch of studies on this, and they found that the one of the most effective things that teams do is exactly that: create the psychologically safe space. What does that look like, brother? Because I talk about this in training. I try to explain it, but I'd love to what does that look like if somebody's listening, they're like, what the heck are you guys talking about? Psychologically safe space. What does that even mean? How do you make that happen inside of the organization?
Well, that's a great question. And like I said, I've been at this for a long time, and 20 years ago, I don't think I was as good at it. When you're on my show, you talked about the importance of empathy. I used to struggle with that, right? I'm like, I don't understand why people can't figure this out as quickly as I can, or why do you get this wrong? This shouldn't be that difficult. But over time, I realized that, people have different strengths and they learn at different paces. And creating a psychological safe space to me means that you have an organization that, first of all, doesn't allow for toxic employees. Um, I learned the hard way. We talked about making mistakes. I had one of my top producers for about 10 years was just an awful, just a bully to everybody, and a sales rep. And when I finally let that person go, it was like, like 1,000 pounds off everybody else's. Everybody
Mm.
else kind of stepped up because they felt like now Learn It was a more safe space to bring ideas without getting their head chopped off. And I also think that when it comes to creating a psychologically safe space, comes to how leadership a lot of times receives feedback. We all talk about giving feedback, but I feel like that people can come to me and say, "Hey, Damon, I really don't agree with this, and or maybe this is wrong, or I didn't appreciate the way you said." And instead of me getting defensive and tense with them, I'll hear them out and say, tell me more, And so I think when you do things like that, and people know that you trust them, and maybe you give them some autonomy and get better at delegating, these are all pieces that help create a psychologically safe work environment. And it's not soft. I'm not talking about anything soft here. I'm talking about you want to be competitive and results and execution oriented, but you also want to give people an opportunity to make it like a sandbox where they can try things and they're not going to get their reprimanded if things don't go well all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned soft skills. Maybe it was on the show before, and you kind of had this like, I don't like that term, or at least
Hmm.
that's what I felt, which I don't either, by the way, because I think they're not soft skills. These are real, tangible skills that if you want to increase your leadership, if you want to increase the productivity of your organization, these soft skills are really, really important. If you can't see me on camera, I'm using air quotes. Tell me about some of these soft skills, quote unquote. I don't know where the term came from. I'm not sure why that's been applied, but maybe we can dispel that term soft and we can call them a different skills. But when you talk about that, what are those skills that are so vitally important that get labeled soft skills? And as I think we both agree, some of the most important skills you need to have as a leader.
Well, they're going to be more important now more than ever and in the future with going back to AI. AI is going to automate a lot of stuff, a lot of coding and everything. And the most important skills, a lot of research has shown, whether it's McKinsey or World Economic Forum or whatever, are skills like creativity, empathy, problem solving, problem solving, communication, you know, uh, human decision making. Those are the type of skills that I'm referring to. Even being authentic as a leader or being vulnerable, these are all soft skills. And again, like I mentioned before, learning agility, those are the type of skills that I'm referring to that are really, as more and more gets automated, those human skills or people skills or whatever you want to call them are going to come to the forefront, because I don't think in our lifetime a lot of that is going to be automated out through AI.
Yeah, that I agree with you. I don't see computers being very empathetic. Although I've noticed they're starting to plug in like emojis now. They're trying to do it. It's kind of funny. I want to go back to your CEO now, and
Mhm.
but you said you were there 30 years. But when you came in, literally receptionist, you said I think your dad was a CEO, and it wasn't like, hey, Damon, we're putting you at a leadership position. we are starting you at ground floor, if you will. How was that working with your dad and ultimately working your way up from receptionist to the position you have today?
So my dad created Learnit. He never worked a day at Learnit. He
Ah,
he liked to play around up in his office, making marketing material or whatnot. I mean, he ran a really large real estate company and a bunch of other stuff. But he was really passionate and loved Learnit. At when I first started, the CEO was our ex CFO from a savings and loan we had in the late '90s. And really, what happened with me was my baseball career ended. I'm struggling with my identity again. I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't think I have any skills. I was I'll be honest, I had too limiting beliefs, and I was afraid to go work at one of our large companies because I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if I'm any good at any of this stuff. I don't know what skills I have. So I knew the guy at Learnit. My dad was really excited about it. I didn't know much about computers. We started off as a computer training company. And I said, I want to start off as a receptionist. And I did that jam for two reasons. One, I was, like I said, unsure of my ability. But two, I didn't want to be Walt Lembi's kid with a silver spoon in his mouth who starts off in a big position. You know, I had to swallow a lot of pride going from a baseball player who hit a home run in the College World Series to a receptionist at a 20-person company. But I wanted to prove to everybody there that I belonged, that I can contribute. And also I wanted to give back to my family. I mean, they were so great to my mom and dad were so great to me over the years. I wanted to, I'm just one of those guys who goes all in whatever I do. And probably why I'm still here after all this time, I just wanted to say, hey, you guys really took care of me. I want to show my dad and my grandfather, especially, who are like, pretty, air quotes again, when it comes to San Francisco real estate, that I can contribute to and give back. And so that's why I started as a receptionist.
love that. And you just continued, obviously, to progress your way up. What are some of the mistakes you made along the way that you're like, oh man, as a leader now, I would never do that again. Because I look back on my career and there's just certain times that I'm like, oh my God, the fact that I still have a job or am able
Mm-hmm.
to be employed at all is remarkable in some of the mistakes. Do you have some of those that stick out that you're like,
Oh,
I cannot believe I did that, and yet I'm
totally.
still here?
I mean, I would say, every 5 years I'd look back at some of my behaviors and say to myself, oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. Whether it's writing really stupid marketing emails or making decisions without getting input from others, bringing on people on board. I mean, one of the biggest mistakes that I made was back in San Francisco, the .com days, right? I was in San Francisco. Learnit was crushing it. I was probably my first year as CEO at Learnit in 2000, and I really wanted to expand. And all my buddies were paper millionaires on, with all their fancy jobs. And my dad's like, you got a brick and mortar thing where you're actually got a product that's profitable. Let's be smart about this. But I pushed them. We opened up like 4 or 5 locations, Los Angeles, Phoenix, all these different places. The market crashed, as you know. And if it wasn't for my family, I'll be honest, if it wasn't for my family being able to step in and cover payroll, I mean, calling my grandfather every 2 weeks and saying, hey, he's like, how you doing, kid? And I'm like, can I borrow $15,000 for payroll? He just blow up at me. But I never gave up, and I learned from those mistakes. And so overcome it. And by the time 2008, when the market was crashing again, I didn't have that luxury anymore because unfortunately my family's real estate really took a nosedive. So I learned from the mistakes I made in 2000 and immediately got together as a leadership team. We made we had the courage to lay off 30% of our staff, and we made the changes to help get us through. So that was a big mistake, over expanding. And then a recent one, which is kind of like a black swan jam that nothing I could really do about it, is one of my dreams with my brother was to always buy an office building and in honor of my dad and my family, and then move Learnit in there instead of paying rent all the time. And so we closed on our first office building in November of 2019. So think about the timing on that. So COVID hits and got a beautiful 12,000 square foot office building in San Francisco. that obviously was a huge mistake, but we're working through that. We never even moved in there, which is a smart decision, um, because everything went virtual. So I've made all kinds of mistakes throughout the year, really large, small, and I just do my best to try to learn from it and be open to sharing them with people, and asking for help. I'm
Yeah.
fortunate I got some good mentors and people I know, and I'm just like, man, I need some advice on what do I do here.
Yeah, it's obviously humbling, and you talked about three of the major recessions that we've seen in our lifetime, and the last one, uh, it is fascinating to literally purchase this building. Here's part of your vision.
Yeah.
We're gonna have this amazing team and culture. We're not paying rent anymore, and yet we never even use it. I guess my question, because you had mentioned Andy Lopez and vision, and this will feed right into it. I've found leaders, one of the things I found people struggle with through the pandemic with people going virtual is the ability to paint that picture, to paint that vision. How do you do that in a virtual environment? How frequently are you talking about what Learnit's vision is so that everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction?
Well, to close the loop on the office building, it's one of the things I'm proud of in the sense of not moving in, because we didn't suffer from sunken cost fallacy, right? We're saying, well, we have to do this, we have to move it in. We, I got the right team around me to look at the pros and cons and the options, and it just didn't make any sense. So as bad as that decision was, it was better not to move in. And when we pivoted over to fully remote, we're hybrid now. I got my little office here in Sausalito now and everything. Um, it wasn't that difficult because I allowed some people to work remotely, anyways. But I prefer in person work. I prefer having people around because I think it is very difficult. Um, I don't think I'm not saying people can't get work done virtually. They can. I've got a great team. It just takes a lot more communication and a lot more clarity, which also the younger generations, I'm sure you see this too, help with, right? Because they want to know more, right? They want things more clear. They want to know why all the time instead of just being, told to do something. And so I think between the newer generations and the pivoting to the hybrid approach and having a really good team and continuing to over communicate through all types of different directions, um, has been great for me. And it's also over the last 7 years, I used to be really hands on operations and everything. And now I've kind of taken a step back and really put a lot more trust into my team to get things done.
Mm.
And so help set the vision, and I'm always there to support, but I'm not like actively involved. I've got a stronger team who's better at a lot of the stuff than I am. So that's kind of how it goes.
How did you finally arrive at that? I find what you just said to be one of the hardest things for a leader to do, to really take your leadership to the next level, the ability to let go, to say, I'm not going to control everything. Not that you're micromanaging before, but certainly being involved to where you say, you know what? I hired you for a reason. I trust you. I'm going to let go. Was there a moment where you were like, light bulb went off? Was it the right hire? How did that happen for you?
Well, one thing I want to say for you small business owners out there or founders who are just getting started, you can't do that at the beginning. You have to roll up your sleeves and do the work, right? If you don't have any customers, you don't have any revenue. I mean, you can't outsource everything. But I think for me, it was two things. One, I'm a big fan of Michael Hyatt. I don't, Michael Hyatt, and he's got this thing called the Freedom Compass, and it's an exercise I go through every year. And it's kind of like, here's what you like to do that's important, that moves the needle. Here's what you can delegate. Here's what you can eliminate. That really kind of helped me guide, where I wanted to spend my time. And quite frankly, a lot of the work that I was doing wasn't moving the needle. Being involved in, the teacher scheduling or, certain aspects around accounting or sales, it wasn't moving the needle. And so we also kind of moved to a structure where we hired outsourced CFOs, outsourced chief revenue officers. And I'm just like, hey, I want to look outside of this bubble, of Learnit and bring in people who are stronger at different areas than I am, and let them challenge me, or more importantly, just kind of take over, with my input. And so I think it's just got to the point where it's like, hey, if I really want to double our revenue or whatever it is I want to get to, and also I'm a dad now, so I want to be able to come home. And I always thought, JM, through my grandfather, that you had to work 80 hours a week, and if you weren't, you're weak. I mean, and he was not a very present dad. My dad was awesome. He'd come home at 5 and everything, but I always thought I had to work 60, 70 hours a week. Then I realized that I don't want to miss my kids' lives, and I'm married now, and really went out and made sure I had the best team possible, and just put my trust into them. And it's turned out, knock on wood, fantastic.
Yeah, it is interesting how we watch previous generations. And I'm not suggesting, obviously, your grandfather sounded extremely successful. And what was the sacrifice along the way?
Big
I don't know
sacrifice.
what that was,
Yeah.
but, X amount of hours also doesn't equate to success, even financially. Maybe it did for in his case, but oftentimes it. I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink, his book Drive and
Mm.
Result Only Work Environment. I really don't care if you work 80 hours a week. What did you get done? That's kind of what I'm hearing. You more focus on the result rather than the time put in.
And I think what you touched on right there, Jam, is so important when it comes to virtual and hybrid work. And I mentor a bunch of people and stuff like that. But what I've found is that it doesn't matter how many hours you put in, people checking in or checking out. What matters is the outcomes that they come up with, right? So who cares how they get things done? As long as they're doing it with integrity and everything else, let them go about their business, and just help them along the way. But in order to do so, you have to set very clear directions and goals for them to achieve. But yeah, I laugh at some of these people that I work with, or that I know, where they make them come into the office in San Francisco to check in. Who cares? Get the goals done, and move on.
Yeah. You have a topic here, beating imposter syndrome for good. I think anyone listening has felt imposter syndrome creep in at some point in their life. I would say when I first wrote my first book, that was when I really felt like, oh man, this imposter syndrome is real. I can feel it. My question is A, how do we beat it for good? And B, when have you felt it where you were like, God, I know I'm not the guy that I'm fooling everybody right now, and I'm not sure how. How do so? I two questions in there, but I'm assuming if you know how to beat it for good, at some point you felt it. When that was, and how do we beat this thing for good?
Well, I think it comes down to, I know you talk a lot about limiting beliefs. I think that all of us at some point or another struggle with imposter syndrome. And if you don't, you're either lying or you're a sociopath, right? So there's always times where we're uncomfortable. And where I really dealt with it for the first time was going into Pepperdine as a baseball player, where I was always the best player in high school everywhere I went. And I got there and everybody was as good as me. And I had a really hard time, and that's why I ended up leaving, really. And how I learned to build, I built like a 4-step framework. By the time I got to Arizona State, people said, well, don't go to Arizona State, there's going to be 17 guys trying out for first base. But I said, this is my last chance with baseball at the time, I thought. And so I'm going to go in and give it everything I got. So the first thing that I say to everybody out there who struggles with imposter syndrome is something called purposeful awfulizing. Think about what it is that you're worried about, right? Say, I've just got promoted to being a new manager. Worst case, what's the worst case scenario? Worst case scenario is that you fail, that maybe you lose your job. Okay, but can you survive that? Yes, I can survive that. For me, it was, if I don't make the baseball team in Arizona State, is that the end of the world? No, who cares, right? So that's step number one. Step number two, and Jay, I'm sure you'll agree with this, is hard work. There's no hacks to getting things done. Creating your own luck. You have to work hard. Step number three like in baseball, I was always the first guy on the field, the last one to leave, and then when I started at Learnit, I just put in the time and effort and learning. Step number 3 is really deliberate practice. Say you're somebody who's afraid to give a presentation, and there's a piece of the presentation you're struggling with. Focus on what you're struggling on and really put in the effort on that and get better at it before you move on. For baseball, I struggled with curveballs. So I'd have the coach throw me 1,000 curveballs, and I just did it over and over and over until I got better at it. And then the final step is, whether you're stepping on stage to give a presentation or stepping into a batter's box or coaching a team for the first time, is learn and let go. Now it's time to perform. Stop worrying about technique and everything else and just give it your best. You might hit it out of the park. You might strike out, fall on your face. But number 1, I think you should give yourself a pat on the back, because a lot of people don't even have the courage to try, right? They don't even have the courage to get out of their comfort zone. And number 2, on top of it, it's always going to be a learning opportunity that you can learn and get better next time. So that's really what I've used, starting with baseball throughout my entire career, of how to overcome imposter syndrome. And I know you talk a lot about just take action, and that's really what you're doing. It's like you're just taking action and not overthinking it. You're doing something about it.
Yeah, so I love the framework because he learned something. He goes and does the muscle memory, the reps over and over and over. But when he's in the game, he's not thinking about, well, my elbow has to be here. I think of golf swing, right? Like, you go to a golf lesson. Well, if you take all of those swing thoughts on, you're not going to hit the ball worth a darn. Learn and let go. I'm applying that to my golf game immediately, Damon, because you just got to get out there and go be an athlete, man. You can put in the reps. You're good to go.
It's just like it's just like anything. It's like when I started being a podcast guest or a podcast, I was awful, right? And hopefully I've gotten better over time, but you're not going to get better unless you're actually out there trying to do it.
Yeah, it is. And just, not thinking about yourself, right? Like, even if you are horrible, look, give it your best, and you can reflect on it later. But in the moment, you just give it your best and you go with it. Speaking of giving it our best here, I'm sure I could ask you questions days on end here, but I'm curious what I didn't know enough to ask you, Damon, that you're like, dude, you should have known enough to ask me this question. Whatever that is that you want to make sure that the audience receives as we start to kind of wrap these things up.
Well, we talked about it a little bit, but it's one thing I always say, that great leaders aren't born or made, they're constantly in the making. So I just think that that's really important. And along with that is, look, if I can do it, you can do it, for all your listeners out there. There's nothing special about my background or my education. I think it's just been through hard work and perseverance and being open to learning and continuously learning, which has helped me be successful. And there's hopefully a lot more that I can still continue to learn and grow and achieve.
Where did this, I know I said that was going to be my last question, but
It's all right.
your humility is truly, it's remarkable because you've achieved some pretty amazing things that people don't know. Arizona State is a very high level baseball program, as is Pepperdine. He literally said they won the national title. This humility thing, this being humble, is this something that mom and dad taught you along the way? Where did it come from? Because you have plenty of reasons to not, and yet you have this way about you, Damon, that's very attractive, and it's just one of those things that I wish more leaders had.
Well, I think part of it I learned from my dad, because whether you were VP of finance at Morgan Stanley on Wall Street or a parking lot attendant, he treated everybody the same. You know what I mean? He just was, he just liked everybody. He liked the characters. And I honestly, part of it, I think I've become more humble over time, Jam, and you and I talked about this. Life doesn't always go as you planned. You know what I mean? So I lost my dad 14 years ago. He was my best friend. My baseball career fell flat on its face. I've had, some health issues that were unexpected. And so I think that all that kind of stuff just kind of helps you put things in perspective and teaches you to be grateful for what you have, and which for me is a great business with great people and 2 healthy kids and a very supportive, patient wife. So I think that that's where my humility has gotten a lot better, and I'm a much different person now than I was 20 years ago as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Brother, I mean, I don't know Learn It as well as I want to, but I'm going to. If people listening, they're like, yeah, man, I'm in. I want to learn more. I want to be a little more humble. I want to do some of these incredible things. Where's the best place to connect with you online? Find Learn It. What's the best area to find you?
I would say I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Got a lot more active over the years. So Damon Lembi on LinkedIn. Check out my Learn It All podcast. JM's episode's coming out soon. And our website is learnit.com. And if you find a class on Learn It, whether it's emotional intelligence, Excel, or coaching, send me a message on LinkedIn and I'll give you a free 2-hour live class or $250 classes. So to say you saw it on this podcast and I'll hook you up.
Amazing. Amazing. Brother, that's an incredible gift. People take advantage of it. I'm telling you, he said Excel. My wife was just talking about getting better Excel. So she'll be reaching out.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I just thank you for coming on and sharing and just showing up in your authentic way, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I had a great time.
I mean, guys, he talked about some incredible things, Hall of Fame coaches, vision, tenacity, courage, and even arguably more important, what not to do, taking credit away from the team, the guy that not a Hall of Fame coach, that is just so much value just there alone. And then all the amazing things with being humble, curious, courage, accountability, integrity, the frameworks that he put in to help you succeed professionally and personally. I'm very fortunate to have listened to the episode. I want you to do the same for somebody else. If you're listening to this, share it with somebody that also needs to know about Learn It and needs to hear this episode. Until next time, remember your mindset matters. I appreciate y'all. We'll talk soon.